Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your sing and that it will have reminded you of what the commandments are. We're going to think today about commandment number 7. Can you work out what it is? Sing through the song if you need to. If you got it? That's right. It's you shall not commit adultery. And in the Bible you can find it in Exodus chapter 20 verse 14. But what does it mean? Have you ever been to a wedding? Think for me for a minute about what happens in the wedding service. There are songs, prayers, Bible readings, and the bit called the marriage ceremony. This is the part where the bride and groom are standing at the front of the church looking at each other, and the minister says something like this. Do you, Rosie, take David to be your lawful wedded husband? And do you promise to love him, share everything you have with him, and not make anything or anyone more important to you than him? And the bride says, I do. This is the marriage vow or the marriage promise. In the marriage ceremony, while the bride and groom make these promises to each other, most important of all, they make these promises to God about each other. Now, do you remember how the rainbow reminds God and us of the promise that he made? Well, the rings that married people wear remind them of the promises that they made to God to not make anything or anyone more important than the person they are married to. Now, because the marriage promises are made to God, marriage is really, really important to God. It's so important that one of the 10 commandments is about marriage. You shall not commit adultery is about marriage. Commit what? Adultery is probably not a word you're very familiar with. What does God mean? Well, marriage is God's idea, and it's when one man and one woman promise God and to each other to love each other in a very special way all of their lives. Adultery is when this promise of very special love is broken by someone or something else. It hurts people. It makes everyone sad. And worst of all, it doesn't please God. So in order to help husbands and wives keep their promise to love each other in this very special way, the 10 Commandments is where God warns them not to break their promise to him and to each other. But Rosie, I'm a child, I'm a kid, and kids don't get married, so this doesn't apply to me. Yeah, well, that's true. But you might get married when you're older, and it would apply to you then. So it's a good idea to try and understand what it means so that if you do get married, you'll want to always please God by not breaking the promise to love your husband or wife in that very special way. But there's something else that this commandment teaches us right now. God gave us the commandments to help us. And this one tells us to keep our promises, even as kids. We are not to break our promises because this brings sadness, hurt, and pain. And worst of all, it doesn't please God. The reason why we should keep our promises is because Jesus keeps his promises. And when we behave like Jesus, that pleases God. Now, the Bible also talks about another marriage where Jesus is the bridegroom and the church is his bride. Now, the church here, just like in the song Brick After Brick, isn't the building. It doesn't mean the building. It means the people that love Jesus. Grown-ups put loads of effort and loads of time and loads of preparation into planning their wedding. And they're really, really, really excited about it. And they really look forward to it. For Christians, those of us who have trusted Jesus as our Saviour and have him as our friend, we should look forward to and plan for and be really, really excited about when Jesus comes back, when he comes back as the bridegroom. The Bible uses this picture for when Jesus returns to earth and when Christians go to heaven to be with God forever. They call it the Great Marriage Feast. We know this will happen because Jesus has promised that he will come back again, and Jesus always keeps his promises. When a wedding is going to happen, invitations are sent out, and the people who send the invitations out always ask you to reply to the invitation and let them know if you're coming. Well, Jesus, the bridegroom, is holding this great marriage celebration, and he's sent out an invitation to you. Have you replied by asking Jesus to be your friend and then following him as your special friend? So at first glance, you might think that do not commit adultery, the seventh commandment, is only really applying to grown-ups that are married. But I hope that you've learnt today that that's not the case. I hope you can realise that even as kids, it is important for us too. It's important because we learn that God always keeps his promises, so he can be trusted. That we're not really very good at keeping our promises because we're not perfect like God is. We need his help to try to be trustworthy and to try to keep our promises. And we need his forgiveness for the times that we get it wrong. But we can also realise that Jesus is coming back again as the bridegroom, and we need to be ready for this and have accepted and answered his invitation to his wedding feast.